This is Worship God, a podcast of the Gospel Coalition Canada. Worship God is designed to equip worshipers and worship leaders for Christ-centered worship.
Well, welcome back to the Worship God podcast. Before we dive into our great episode today, we really want to encourage you, if you've been blessed by these episodes, if you like them, if there's people you'd like to hear them, we'd encourage you really to share these episodes, like or rate them wherever you listen to it. That really helps us. But we'd also really like to hear from you. I think primarily, we'd love to just hear how these episodes are blessing you and how you're using them in your ministry. And so we have a Facebook page. You can send us a note there, but also you can email us at worshipgodpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Well, today I am joined by two good friends from the west coast of our fine nation, our Worship God co-host, Pat Sabell. Pat's written songs for Sovereign Grace. He's the director right now at Gospel Commonwealth. And we're also joined by Andrew Geddert, who is the worship pastor at Northview Community Church in Abbotsford, BC. Guys, thank you for being on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Rob, it's really good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Now, Andrew, this is your first time on the podcast. Some of our listeners may or may not know who you are. Some will, of course. But maybe just tell us a bit about yourself, what you do at Northview. Give us a bit of background.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. So I am the worship pastor at Northview Community Church in Abbotsford, BC. My wife, Brittany, and I have been attending here since 2013 when we moved to Abbotsford. We got married that same year and started attending. I went to a small Bible college here in Abbotsford called Columbia Bible College, and at the same time was serving in the church and eventually finished my degree and started an internship at Northview, which led to a job as a director of worship, kind of overseeing young adults, youth worship, and then became the associate pastor and eventually the pastor of worship. And so I have been in this role now since January 2019. Northview is a multi-city, multi-site church, so I get to do a lot of connecting with our other campus pastors and worship leaders, both here in Abbotsford and in the city of Mission across the river. We have a couple campuses in Abbotsford, and so it's a lot of working with other worship leaders, helping them oversee their services. And then I also lead regularly at one of our main sites here in Abbotsford, working with our volunteer teams, helping oversee the weekend services, and just being a part of our weekend gatherings.
Now, Northview has a pretty kind of thriving songwriting community too. Maybe talk a bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you describe it as thriving because Northview has been through some ebbs and flows of songwriting. We do have a really talented group of songwriters, and many of who have been here at Northview for years and years and years. One of our former worship pastors, when he first came to Northview, started a small group of songwriters. They actually did a couple of live albums. And then there was a bit of a season where Northview was a little quieter and we didn't do much. Since I've been in this position now, since 2019, started to get back involved with a few of those writers and haven't been super organized. It's been a little bit more organic over the last couple of years. You know, as songs just kind of come up from within, as our writers just bring stuff to us, we take them and we bring them to the congregation and we see what sticks. We haven't really met with any particular rhythm or schedule, but It's been fun. It's been fun to see, to hear and see our gifted and creative people be able to bring their voice, use their creative expression to glorify God, to bring, the truths of the Bible into song and bring those to our congregation. And so the most kind of formal thing we've done is that in September of this last year, we did just a small live album recording night, 4 or 5 songs on a little EP that we recorded with our whole congregation singing them. We'd kind of taught the folks over the summer how to sing the songs, and it was really neat to see everybody just bring their own voice and be this one big congregational choir And so we just released those songs this at the start of this year.
Yeah, from my perspective, if you've got a song on Spotify, you got a thriving community. I don't have it. I don't have any. So, but also I think that it's thriving in the sense that it sounds like very kind of much like it's kind of a wellspring in the community. It's coming up naturally, and even though it's maybe not as consistent, that's a beautiful thing. And we're going to be talking about kind of songs today, because singing plays a huge role in our worship gatherings on the weekends. It's always played a role in Christian worship. We think about even in the New Testament where Paul commands the church to sing all kinds of songs, Colossians 3:16. As part of the word of Christ dwelling richly within us. He talks even in 1 Corinthians 14 about some people bringing hymns. And so hymns are part of corporate worship. And Jesus and his disciples sung together at times. We've read that in the Gospels. And so there's a lot. Music plays a big role in Christian gatherings, maybe more prominently today than maybe 1,500 years ago, but still, it plays a big role. And there is today so much music available to the church. There are so many artists, churches, music movements releasing songs. I read this one Forbes article that said Christian music sales account for 3.5% of all music sales in the U.S. So that's a decent chunk. And part of the job of the worship leader, the worship pastor, who this podcast is kind of geared towards worship folks, one of the big responsibilities is finding good songs. And I find, for me personally, I don't know if you guys agree, that's one of the biggest challenges today as a worship leader is finding good songs that we can sing at church. And I think the issue is because there's a difference between songs that I just love to listen to, songs that are on the radio that I love jamming out to and put them on my Spotify playlist and enjoy. There's a difference between that and then a song that we should sing at church, a song that's meant to be sung corporately as a congregation at church. And just because it's a Christian song, it doesn't mean it's necessarily good for corporate worship. I don't know how many times you guys have been suggested songs by well-meaning congregants and they're like, oh, I heard the song on the radio, we should sing it. It's by whoever. And you're like, well, it's a Christian song, but it doesn't really have that kind of congregational feel. So that's what we wanted to talk about today, is what makes a song congregational? Like what makes a good worship song? And so guys, to start, how would you define a good song? Like what are the key ingredients from your perspectives to a good song that can be used at church?
I think there's kind of two sides to that, Rob. Like there's the mechanics or the practical side of a good song, and then there's maybe the idea of like, how is this song going to serve my church, the people in my church for maybe a specific diet. But I some friends that I have written songs with and have spent a lot of years with. Taught me way long ago that the important mechanics or ingredients of a good song is and it's three things that has stuck with me for many years is singability. And I think when we're thinking in terms of our church, so does our church want to sing this song? Sometimes we can be pushing a song as a worship guy or a worship leader, worship lady leader, and we can miss the point that we just really like this song, but does it serve the church? So is it singable? Is it there's originality? So is there something in it that's fresh? When David says in Psalm 40, we're to sing to the Lord, here he's put a new song in my mouth. And I think that's the beauty of songs that are coming to the church on a regular basis. There's something fresh. And so is there something fresh in the song? And then is it engaging or emotive, something that draws people in emotionally? I think this is really important. So that's kind of the mechanics or the practical side. I think then there's this, when my church sings this song, do they yearn to love and walk with Jesus more? That's the kind of songs I want to put out there. Is it God focused? Is it focused on who He is and what He has done? So I think those are some of the components that make a great worship song. Andrew, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, those are great thoughts, Pat. I would agree. My former worship pastor, Dr. Johnny Markin, worked on this really beautiful, extensive, comprehensive rubric for song selection that had a whole massive list of different categories that have been really formative in the way that I've thought about music selection. And there's three kind of like broad categories that I typically distill it down to. And Pat, you've touched on most of those, but I kind of think of it in terms of, my first priority is I want to see that it is truth filled, that it has ties to orthodox theological ideas, biblical themes and concepts are all clearly represented there. Is the message true and clear, and does it lead us to, not just the Word, but the Word, Jesus Christ, obviously. And then the second one is singable, like you would say. And I started to kind of think of this one as, I put a little spin on it. I ask myself, is this sing-outable? So not only is it easy to sing, but does it actually make you want to sing it out? And I've found that to be a helpful thing, because there are songs that are easy to sing, but they just don't necessarily always inspire you to kind of be like, yeah, man, I really want to just lean into that and belt that out. And not that every song has to be this, anthem cry. There can be simple, sweet songs as well. But so, truth-filled, sing-outable, and then the third one is a little bit subjective. But I try to think of it in terms of like, is it beautiful? Is it pleasing to hear? Is it? And I would put the idea of being like memorable and catchy in that kind of category of aesthetically pleasing. Do people really enjoy listening to and singing this song out? And so I don't know. I think of songs in those three larger categories. And again, Pat, most of those were pretty much in line with what you described.
What kind of role in this does preference play? Because I think the three of us could probably grab a list of 10 songs, and we may have different opinions on maybe all of them. And I might say, this song is super singable, guys. And Pat might go, I don't know, man. Like, that's not gripping me. And Andrew, you're going, yeah, that doesn't have like the sing out. It's not aesthetically beautiful to me. Like, it's just kind of bland. And so let's talk a bit about that subjective kind of nature. I remember my senior pastor years ago, many, many years ago, he was like, oh, we need to sing more of the good hymns. And he was like, we should sing like And Can It Be? And I remember thinking in my brain, like, I think And Can It Be is one of the least congregational hymns that's out there by all metrics. Like it's got like a crazy range. It's got these insane runs that don't feel intuitive. It's not really a predictable melody. That was my opinion, right? And yet that song is sung in churches all over. It's like a classic for many Christians. And I scratch my head at that one because I'm just like, how did this song become so singable? So clearly I'm at odds with most other people. So there's got to be the subjective nature of music has to play into this somehow. I guess the question is, to what degree? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it will ever make everybody happy. And it's purely based on preference or subjectivity, to get your whole congregation to be excited about a song you're going to teach. I don't know what the odds are, but I think it would be a low percentage of getting, 100%. Everybody, I love that song. And I think that the beautiful thing is that's the church. There's unity. There should be unity in diversity. And so like if you talk to somebody, like I've been working at a church near Andrew in Abbotsford that are filled with Mennonites that came from Paraguay, and these people are trained musically, and when you're trained musically and you can read music, and all of a sudden, how can it be? Or is an easy song to sing, and so then you got there's a whole camp that says what we sing nowadays is it's a shame because everything's a 3 or 4 chord. We've lost creativity, we've lost something. So there is so much preference. I think the question I have when we even say that is what makes a great worship song, defined by who? Because
Right.
there's this, so everyone has a definition maybe of what makes a great worship song. It could be a season in your life where you're really going through, like I can tell you moments in my life where a song became a great worship song in my life. But if I would have said to you, like, hey, listen to this song, you might think at that time, wow, it's just not that great of a song. Rob, we've had conversations many times of something that works out here in the West that thrives in my congregation, but you've said, I couldn't even teach that at my church.
Right.
So, I think there's a lot of preference involved here.
Yeah, I think that there are 2 factors at play there. I mean, there's probably many, but 2 that come to mind. And one is the cultural context in which you find yourself with a particular congregation. There's an author in a book called The Worship Words where they talk about excellence is doing very well what is fitting for the context. And I mean, like you were talking about, Pat, how some songs will resonate really well in a particular setting, that is defined by X number of factors, various demographics, stages of life, geographical place in the world, all these kinds of different things that factor into how a given song will be received by a particular congregation. And then even like the season of life that particular church is in, some songs will be really meaningful in that particular congregation based on what is happening around them. A song in, a small church congregation in Israel right now is going to, be received very differently from one that's in Abbotsford. And so I think that it is very contextual. Like we can talk, there is certainly a number of like relatively objective measuring factors where you can say, yeah, okay, these kinds of songs that do these types of things are probably going to be better received by the majority of people. But then there are just little intangible things that make certain songs land and others don't. And then even the amount of time you spend teaching a song or singing it, like a relatively musically illiterate congregation, if you sing And Can It Be Enough, they will probably eventually, pick up on it, and it may or may not stick. And for like Rob, even for your pastor and for those around you, it might just be that they heard that song over and over and over the course of years, and it was, sung at Aunt Betty's funeral, and so it had that extra significance for them. And I don't know.
Well, I think the idea of maybe aesthetic beauty, that's probably going to be more in the subjective side than like what makes a good worship song. Well, good doctrine. Like none of us should be singing songs with bad doctrine in our churches, and so we can kind of go, well, that is like that's not going to change in Israel. It's not going to change in Korea, and that's not going to change in Aurelia. But aesthetic beauty there may be songs like Pat's saying that, resonate with a community. Maybe there's a style of music that's taking over the region. And so there's a worship song that kind of meets that style, and it's got good doctrine and it's singable and these things. But because that style is popular, people get wound up, they love it, and then that song becomes kind of their anthem. So I think that the intangible things about your community, the context that you come from, I think is important. And I think that definitely plays plays a role in that. What would be some examples? Like maybe let's get really practical here. What might be some examples of songs that you guys would say are good for corporate worship, and then maybe some that you would say aren't good? And we're not here to trash songs. We're just based off of maybe some of these key factors. What would be a song that you guys would just go, I think this is a good example of a good corporate worship song. It matches these things. And then maybe we can talk about, and you know what, this song, I hear it done often. I don't know. I don't think it my opinion may not be that corporate because of these factors. What would you guys say?
Yeah, so I'll give an example of a song that I think is really great for corporate worship. Rob, I know this is a song that's very dear to your heart. We've talked about it before. But Behold Him by our good friend
PB.
Paul Beloche and Mitch Wong, co-writer. This song is great on a number of levels in that it has a beautiful narrative flow to it while also having a central theme. You know how some songs can have they have a narrative flow, but the scope is huge. You know, I mean, this one just centers on beholding Jesus, the Lamb of God. It's all about who he is, you know, what he has done, and honoring, exalting, and revering him. It's very singable. It's in a nice, 6/8 feel. The words aren't coming at you overly fast, but it tells, a story with some depth. The range is very concise. It doesn't have huge jumps. It can be sung in a variety of keys, be led by male or female, and can be done in a variety of styles. So for me, it just it ticks off so many boxes of being useful in a congregational setting. And it not only teaches, but it also it helps us emote. Like, to me, it's a very emotionally uplifting and engaging song.
Yeah.
But it's all just truth. It's wonderful truth about who Jesus is and his holiness. And so for me, that's one great sort of modern example of a song that works really well.
Yeah, I think there's, and that chorus is beautiful. It's a response. So verses are telling us, who he is, what he's done, and then the chorus is just, this is the only appropriate response, right? I think songs that are declarative, this is who you are, this is what you've done, this is what you're still doing, this is what you will do, what you're gonna do. Focus on Jesus, focus on the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Revelation 5, one of the best sermons I think I've ever heard by Darrell Johnson, Revelation 4 and 5 and Isaiah 6. And, he talks about the thin veil that separates us, and we just pass through that veil when we die. And he just talks how thin that veil is, but right now, the worship service that is taking place and the worship songs that are being sung right now are about the worthy Lamb who was slain. And he's worthy to receive glory and honor and blessing. And so I feel like often we get tangled up in too much stuff that begins with me, or what I need to do, or I need to do more of this, or we're trying to do something so that the Spirit will come. And often, John 16:14, Jesus said, of the Spirit, he will bring glory to me. He, the Spirit, will bring glory to me by taking what was mine and making it known to you. So even the Spirit's work is he's present with us to make Jesus more glorious in our eyes. So to sing songs that are declarative of who Jesus is. That's why I love Behold Him as well, Andrew, because that song just, it tells us of, He who was before there was time, in the beginning was the Word, and then the second verse, He who dined with sinners and saints. It's giving you this picture of his He always was, but He was present and He became flesh and He dwelt among us. But behold this holy, holy, holy one. That's the kind of songs we need to sing in our church.
Yeah. And I think what this song is an example too of a song that is framed in congregational language. So it's declarative of things about God, but then it sets it in the context of us, of our, paid with blood to settle our debt. Even now He is in our midst. He became like the least of us.
Right.
And that just helps to, it helps to combat, just as declaring, the greatness and grandeur of God does, it helps to combat our constant proneness to individualism, to navel-gazing, to spending our time thinking about ourselves and having our eyes fixated on all our problems and circumstances. And when we come to gather to worship with other believers, we should be fixing our eyes on the Lord, and then also acknowledging that we're not alone, and the Christian walk is not just about me and Jesus. It's about the fact that we've been saved into the people of God. So that's another reason why the song is great, I think.
Yeah. Another song like Only a Holy God does that similar thing as well.
Yeah.
You stole my idea. I think that's another really good example of a song that has that "Come and behold Him," kind of chorus, but then the verses kind of unpack, kind of theologically, the nature of this God, and it's very much that's the kind of idea of worship. We behold God, we see Him, and then we respond and we praise Him, and so songs like that kind of really capture that. Are there songs that you guys, the other side of the coin, that you would go, man, look, I'm not judging you for singing this song. I personally wouldn't do it. And like one song that I think is that way, and you guys may not agree with me, is Same God. Are you talking about the elevation worship, Same God? Elevation, yeah, Same God. Sorry, yeah, okay, yeah. Elevation, Same God. My God, I need you now. Oh, I need you now. That song. I just find some of the lyrics kind of, I look at it and I'm kind of, I don't know if that's how I would say that. I find the melody is in the chorus is okay, but some of the lines are not super intuitive and they're more challenging for the regular person to sing. Just the line, I may not face Goliath, I've got my own giants. We all kind of joke about the putting ourselves in David's shoes kind of thing. So that's one that I go, yeah, I probably personally wouldn't do that. I don't judge anybody for doing it. If somebody disagrees with me, they can. But just for me, I go, yeah, that's something that I would go, I don't think that's a great congregational song. I was singing it at a conference recently. And again, I was just like, yeah, I don't think I would do this one. What's the song that you guys would kind of highlight and go, yeah, that's something I wouldn't do. I don't think that's a great song, my opinion.
Oh man, I haven't really given thought to a specific song, Rob. I think there's a whole lot out there. Obviously, it's this is a big undertaking. I think of a worship pastor, worship director, to sift through, because we're just being bombarded by songs, and I think there's the danger is we get sucked in or wooed in by the YouTube video or whatever. We're taken up in the emotion and the and there's some of these are just done so well, So you're just caught in that. But you know, my dear friend Bob Coughlin used to always say that, and this was long before, you know, we had YouTube, and you actually would get a tangible CD in your hand, and he always talk about taking the sleeve out and reading the lyric before, you know, we got caught up in you know, whatever that song was that, you know, it instantly has grabbed your heartstrings. You're like, oh, I love this, but like, why do I love it? That's maybe a better question. So, you know, I think in a day and age where, you know, you got the camp of we really need to be theological and we want to be very careful about emotionalism, and then the camp of we want God to affect our hearts. We do like theology, but we're theology light or whatever, you know. I just think there in all of this, there's a place where we just need to be asking the right questions of those songs that we sing, and what I find often is something that maybe grabs me. I might like whip out to 3 or 4 friends and say, "Hey, what do you think of this song?" And I think that's a great way to, you know, to sift through, and obviously big questions as well. Is this going to serve my church specifically, my congregation? And I think that's the danger of everything that's out there, is that, and obviously it's a reality that the, you know, high percentage of churches are taking those songs because those are the songs that are always being put on the charts as the, you know, top 20 songs being sung. So the really good YouTube, the really good production, and I think sometimes we just kind of throw our brain away and we are more attracted to what we see, you know, what we hear, what it does to us emotionally. And I think it's not one or the other. It's head and heart. It's making sure that we're looking at this song in a way that's going to be best for our church and honor Jesus, bring glory to Jesus.
Yeah, that's it's really hard because you know, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I will get requests from folks all the time to do songs that are, you know, really popular, and honestly, most of the time, or many times, I'll listen to it, and I mean, I'm always the one to like pull up the lyrics first, read them, and if there's something I don't even like, I probably won't even listen to the song, to be honest. I try to be as charitable as I possibly can and as generous to the author, but I tend to be as careful as I can with where there is a lack of clarity, or, you know, if a song is like even just a degree off, partly due to the fact that, you know, we want to honor and guard the truth, but also I want to be careful not to just distract my congregation with songs that are unclear or that raise questions. So, I mean, I'm always a lyrics first kind of guy. And so for an example of a song that is being done by a number of churches in our area and schools and chapels and stuff, and that I've had, you know, personal requests for, is the song Praise by Elevation. It was written by, I think it's Brandon Lake, Chris Brown, Furtick, Chandler Moore maybe. And like undeniably just a really, really fun, joyful song that, you know, is generally about biblical things, you know, about praising the Lord and having a reason to give praise. And even the bridge, you know, reasons about God's sovereignty and that he reigns, that he rose and defeated the grave. But it's one of the ones that is like kind of sneakily, in my opinion, just a degree off in its presentation of what is being accomplished by our praise. And so in the verses, you know, some of the examples of just some of the language.
It's elevation, you know, so there's going to be a lot of Old Testament references.
Yeah, I'll praise in the valley, praise in the mountain. I'll praise when I'm sure, praise when I'm doubting. Great. You know, praise in all circumstances. Wonderful. I'll praise when outnumbered, praise when surrounded, because praise is the water my enemies drown in. And I'm like, well, okay, so, I'm assuming that's Old Testament reference to crossing the sea with the Israelites. And you're like, is our praise the thing that is like slaying, destroying enemies? Like, okay,
Right.
try to be, creatively generous there. But then in another case, it's like talking about how, praise is a weapon. It's more than a sound. My praise is the shout that brings Jericho down. And this is a common, if you listen to modern worship music, this is a very, very common theme and thread in a lot of songs now, where there is this emphasis and hyper focus on like what I do in worship accomplishes, that it is this triumphalism of the individual, that if I can I'm going to sing my way out of the battle if I just praise loud enough, long enough, with enough enthusiasm, the walls are going to come down, the prison doors will open, and there's multiple. I feel like this is a classic kind of charismatic Pentecostal approach to a few of those Old Testament stories of like, oh, but like look at Jericho, look what happened, look at when David played on the harp, or look at Paul and Silas in prison, all this kind of stuff. And I just don't know. I've never been convinced that those are examples of the efficacy of musical worship, accomplishing something. And so this song and others of its ilk always tend to raise a flag for me of like, what are we accomplishing? What is happening when we praise? Is it that we are coming to the Lord and honoring him and asking him and declaring his goodness and his promises or are we coming with this like war cry to win our individual personal battles? And and so it's tough because a lot of people love the song and it has merit in some areas, but that's just one area that I kind of haven't been willing to compromise on. And so anyways, that's one example.
So does this then, guys, mean that there's no benefit for songs that aren't good, quote unquote, for corporate worship? Does that mean that therefore, like, they probably should have thrown praise and, battle belongs and, what's the one I said? Same God. Like, they should probably they should have thrown those on the cutting room floor because they kind of missed. They should have maybe done another few takes on those lyrics, kind of thing. Like, can those songs have benefit? And if so, what does that look like?
I know there's a lot of stuff out there, that's like 10 reasons why I don't sing this camp song or that camp song, or I think I don't know the hearts of these people. I think the older I get, the more I'm aware that there's people out there that don't think like me, that love Jesus probably more than I do. And so, and we might be surprised one day when we actually join, when we pass through that veil and we join the worship service that's already in progress, that's constantly in progress, that there's a lot of people there that we didn't think would get there because they sang a specific song that we wouldn't do. So yeah, I think they're, I feel like the older I get, the more I'm mindful of, my thought is I got 4, maybe 5 songs to sing to lead my church in on a Sunday morning. I want to be very intentional that those songs are like I think Andrew said, the belly button gazing, the looking inward. I want to help them lift their eyes and not so they can sing, because maybe that morning they don't feel like praising. They don't have reasons to praise, and the only thing that's going to give them the ultimate reason to praise is to be reminded of who Jesus is and what he's done for them. And that never changes. Not in the worst day of their life, that never changes. And so, are there good songs out there that we don't want to sing in our church. I think there are. I think you can jam in your car, and I have a 6-year-old, and for some reason things just get playing on my Jeep. I don't even know how they show up, but they're not on my playlist. So I'm learning all kinds of stuff that I never knew existed. So we have a good time, listening. I mean, music moves you in beautiful ways, and I think God created us to be that way. But when it comes down to my church specific, the people that God's called me to shepherd or to, I want to be intentional. I want to serve them as well as I can. And in terms of all other songs, I think there's just a list of songs and people that I've sang their songs that today aren't walking with Jesus. Some have walked away from their faith. Some have changed major lifestyles, and God has used their songs many times in my life to just remind me of how beautiful Jesus is. And so, and I think we could go back to the old hymns and realize that some of these writers had quite the past, and had we known them personally, we might say, how could we ever sing that song?
Zach Hicks, author, describes the worship pastor as a theological dietitian, and I think that image has always stuck with me as just the importance of when we feed our people, being really careful what we feed them, because we always talk about how people Monday morning, people have already forgotten most of what the pastor said in his sermon, but they'll probably be singing the last song they sung, or even a couple of the songs you sang with them together. And so the songs that we choose in our corporate gatherings are incredibly formative, especially if we're choosing good songs, because ideally then they will be memorable, catchy. They'll be easy to sing, and so you'll be singing them to yourself throughout the week. Yeah. And so it creates an actual theological diet for people. So, I think we need to be as careful and as considerate as possible as we select those songs. But there is benefit to, listening to music for beauty's sake and just appreciating a song that is fun to listen to. So, confession, I listen to the song Praised by Elevation on my own time because it hypes me up. It's musically and rhythmically really fun. Do I obviously am in a place where I am thinking critically about that kind of stuff, and so to me it's less like that's less a part of my theological diet, because I'm able to kind of compartmentalize and say, okay, love the music, don't necessarily espouse all of these ideas. But I'm not giving it to my people, feeding it to them, putting the words on their lips for them to regulate. If they choose to do it on their own time, obviously you can't control people's lives. You can only disciple them in the truth the best you can and lead them in that way, and trust that the Holy Spirit will lead them to the truth. Yeah. But I think, so it's still merit, but I think we have to have great care as pastors, leaders, mentors, disciplers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's Martin Luther who talks about how, people who don't view music as like a marvelous creation of God, it's like somebody who doesn't appreciate just music and love music. He says and view it as a gift of God. He says they must be a clodhopper indeed, and they don't deserve to be called a human being. But he should be permitted to hear nothing but the braying of asses and the grunting of hogs. And I love that, because it's like, God made us. Good old Luther, he's not one to not throw punches, but there's something beautiful. A lot of music. Like I remember for a while, I loved Gyra from Elevation. Like I would never do that song at church, but I was like, man, I love that song, And so I got them on most of the songs. I can go through my Spotify playlist with you guys, and there's like Here Be Lions stuff on there that I would never do at church. And it's like, but I just enjoy this stuff. and I like it. And so for me, it's edifying to listen to, and it stirs my affections, as Edward says. That's what music is for. Stirs my affections to the Lord, and that's what music is for. And as long as I'm not doing it heretically, then it can be beneficial. What would you guys say then as we wrap up? Then we got worship leaders, worship team members here. They're like, okay, I want to find some good songs. Like, help me. Like, what are some tips and tricks for sifting and sourcing good music for church? What's a bit of advice you guys might hand out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with you as an individual, knowing what you believe about, the gospel, what you believe about, just systematic theology, sound doctrine. It's key to it's the beginning of, it's the foundation for how do I pick good songs for my church. I think often the modern worship leader, that's not even a category often to be theologically sound or to, and it's key. It's key to being able to discern. And then I think once you're grounded and you know that, Charles Spurgeon talked about the preachers are supposed to soak in a text. He said it's like getting in a bathtub and just soaking in that. I would say to a worship leader that's listening, soak in the gospel, soak in being with Jesus, encountering Jesus, delighting in Jesus, soak in the glories of the Trinity, soak in, soak in these glorious truths. And then from that place, now you're able to, I would say, listen to everything. If it's coming across your desk, if it's on YouTube, listen to it, and then and discern, like, could this serve my church? Will it? It's the questions. Will it make my church? Will they want to sing? And will they yearn to love Christ more and walk with Christ more? Is there gospel content? Because I think it's primary in the day and age in which we live, which we're prone to wander, and everything is calling for our attention on a regular basis outside of the church and saying this is better. When we need to keep putting Jesus in front of them and saying, "Are you kidding me? Like, look at him, see who he is, see what he's done." There's nothing that compares to that. Nothing that compares to him. And so, yeah, I think it's important for us to be grounded in what we believe, what we know to be true, and then from that place, I think, listen. Put your listening ears to work and discern. And maybe it's about diet. Like, have you thought in terms of that for your church? What is your church singing at present? What's missing in that diet for your church? I think good questions.
Yeah, diet is a huge question of, I wonder how many people have sat down and taken time to evaluate where the majority of their songs focus or land. Because even for myself, I've had to ask this question a few times and stop and think and kind of do a yearly recap evaluation. Okay, what are we primarily singing about? Hopefully Jesus, and God-focused emphasis, but maybe all we're singing about is Jesus, and we're not talking about the Holy Spirit or the love of the Father, or what are some of these themes that we're just leaving out, and that we could create a bit more of a robust catalog of songs, just like the hymn books were kind of designed to do. They were designed to have a breadth and a depth to them to teach and instruct Christians in a variety of theological and biblical ideas and topics. And I would say one of the things that has been really helpful for me in selecting, good music, as I would define it, is just having an actual list of criteria, like have some kind of rubric written down somewhere that you can always come back to and reference, so that when your congregation, when a member inevitably comes to you and say, hey, why are we singing that song? Or why can't we sing this song? Or you rejected it, or you chose this one. You can kind of look and go, well, actually, here are the categories with which I evaluate songs, and then, here's how it fits in our diet and where we were lacking. And so this one fit that particular category. I just think having some objective tools at your disposal to evaluate and select and reject based on those is really helpful, because otherwise it's just far too easy to just go based off of stuff you like, and man, I heard that song, I love that song, that one really just hit me in the heart, or somebody comes to you with that same rationale, and you go, okay, yeah, it's great, do it. But I just don't think it's quite enough. You need to have just a bit more robust of a lens to evaluate that with. And cast a wide net, like Pat said. Cast a wide net and just take the finest fish, so. Yeah.
I think one thing that's helpful for me, and Pat mentioned it earlier on, is pick songs and team. Like have some key people that you trust, their ears, their eyes, their theology.
Yeah.
And throw songs to them and just go, hey, I've been thinking about doing kind of this song. What do you guys think about it? And get their sense. I did that recently with Pat. There was a song I heard called Sing to the King. And I kind of liked it. I digged it. And so I sent it to Pat. I was like, I wonder what Pat thinks. And Pat was like, yeah, I don't actually think it's that congregational. And then as a response, I kind of went, yeah, actually, I think he's right. Like, I like it. It's going on my Spotify playlist, but I don't think I'll do it. And so that being able to bounce off people, and whether that's a small group in your church of key worship leaders you're developing, that can be a good teaching even opportunity, is throw the song to them. They all go, yeah, we love it. And you go, okay, the right answer should have been no, and this is why. And then you can kind of have those conversations.
I was just going to say, I think on that line with team it's probably helpful to get people outside of your tribe, or the people in your church, because often the preference that you're all, there can be similarities because they've been under you, and you have a certain way of doing things. So sometimes, like, going outside of that and asking people that you may not ask. And sometimes we think our lead pastor, he doesn't sing well, he's not musical, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes it's good to even fire him and say, hey, what do you think of this song?
Totally. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for being on the podcast today. And thank you, listeners, for listening. We hope this episode was helpful. We'd love to hear from you again. So you can email us at worshipgodpodcast@gmail.com. But thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.
Worship God is a production of the Gospel Coalition Canada. For more Christ-exalting resources, go to ca.thegospelcoalition.org.